Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're at, ladies and gents. I am Kure Isagami, and welcome back to class with another installment of my Robattle Studies 102 curriculum, where in this particular specialized playlist, you'll be seeing a lot more in-depth analysis, understanding, and instruction on how to understand the various mechanics that go primarily into Medarot S, but also into Medarot as a whole, ranging from parts, to metals, to composition, and everything else in between. This particular curriculum will be your best friend in learning to understand how it works so you too can ascend to be that Medarotter you've always dreamed to be. With this particular lesson, we're going to be focusing just a little bit more in depth with metals. This time around, instead of focusing on how to raise or ascend metals to stronger masteries and understand their higher levels, this time we're going into depths into more of the passives that go behind how exactly each and every metal ticks, and how even metals with the same nature, which is what we'll be covering, will more often than not have completely different behaviors and completely change how they fight based on what metal you equip or how you choose to use it. As you see here, there are 6 different kinds of natures that you can see, and that each nature is denoted by the colored crystal that you'll see somewhere on the metal. Those colors are red, pink, blue, green, purple, and cyan. Each flavor designates a different kind of nature, and each nature has their own priorities on what they like to target, what they like to do, and the best way that you can optimize that particular metal type with how you build your bot. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump right in officially with the introduction of the first nature. The first nature of the 6 will be power nature. Now these metals you can use with parts that are basically ready to use right out of the box. They don't require any major setup, they're not primarily Medaforce reliant, or really don't have any kind of condition or boot or bonus, and you can basically use them without any real drawback or issue because they're going to have a very consistent overall performance. Power nature metals are denoted by the red colored crystal as you see on these samples. They like to target legs with low heat and cool stats. So these are going to be primarily enemies that may not be the fastest on the field and require a little more prep time to use their attacks or to cool down from them. And this is usually your easiest clue to tell these are the ones that are going to be the more dangerous, because usually the drawback to having very high power is very low heat and cool. So try to capitalize on trying to nuke the heavier fighters or the more dangerous ones on the enemy team when using power nature metals. The passive bonus that power nature metals like to give is a flat 150 to power. So it doesn't matter what kind of offense type parts you use, they can be melee or shooting, you can guarantee that whatever the stat bonus or base stat is on the part, you can add about 150 more to that and emphasize a higher damage output, especially if modifiers are involved, such as, say, Power Rifle or Giga Gatlings times 1.5, or even with Medaforce reliant stuff that adds multiplicatively relative to the base damage on the part. Medaforce bonuses when using power nature metals is a 5% every time you attack. So every time, say, for instance, Metabi, as a very popular power nature type, as denoted by the Kabuto medal, every time he uses a rifle, a Gatling, or his missile attack, that's 5% to his charge gauge for every successfully completed attack action he completes on his turn. So this is not necessarily going to be a very Medaforce reliant metal in my honest opinion. This is more someone who, like I said, is one who's designed to be used right out of the box with very little setup required or necessary, and can basically be a one-man unto himself more than really relying on outside support or teamwork. The starting Medaforce that power nature metals will give you as a guaranteed as Medaforce 1 is Berserk, which will buff your base power by 80% as long as that buff remains active. So if you weren't already aggressive before, well, now you are even more so on the field as long as that buff remains in effect. This can really bring out the power output of any of those readily usable parts, especially ones that don't require setup or building up or need time to actually get really aggressive. Optimal builds for power nature metals include ready to fight out of the box, like I've said. dedicated nukers. So this one, again, is not really Medaforce reliant, so such as, say, rifle, power rifle, Giga Gatling, shotgun as popular examples, things that don't require any major kind of setup or are primarily Medaforce reliant. Now, you can use Medaforce reliant parts and build with a power nature metal. You are more than welcome to, absolutely, if you want to capitalize on that power bonus. But it's not required, because power likes to start right from the gate on the right foot, where most other metals tend to want to kind of take a step back and prepare. Power nature does not. The second nature of the 6, sporting the blue colored crystal, is the speed nature. These, on the other hand, are built much in contrast to power nature. These tend to be able to attack, hit and run, so to speak. Whereas they tend to focus on trying to keep very dodgy and try to keep an evasive edge over the competition to try to keep their damage as low as possible. Speed nature metals like to target arms with high heat and cool. So these like to target enemies that tend to be a little speedier on the field and tend to, for lack of a better term, match what the speed nature metal itself can already bring to the field. So this is going to be a really good way to test who really is the fastest on the field when it comes to that. A lot of these fighters tend to be like mixed ailment or hybrid fighters, which tend to not really focus as heavily on power, but instead on, say, ailments or more conventional or much weaker attacks that are used as setup for something much more powerful on an ally. Speed nature metal passives gives you a plus 40 to heat and cool and a plus 80 to your evade. So again, this kind of touches base on the fact that speed natures, as denoted by their name, like to try to keep that competitive and speed edge on the competition any chance they get. And if they fail on the speed front, they try to focus and rely on the ability to dodge or graze and try to keep that damage as low as possible, or even just negate it outright if they successfully dodge. Medaforce bonuses for speed nature metals is a 20% every time you dodge or graze an incoming attack. So basically using for like flight or sea legs, which tend to have a very high base evade, every time you dodge or graze, that's free Medaforce charge that you can use to prep for a retaliatory nuke. That being said, some optimal and suggested parts you could use as ideas to emphasize on this would be, say, for instance, Conceal or Kernel, which is a 50% boost to evade, which is also makes you much more likely to dodge or graze. Other bots that can capitalize this, such as any leg abilities of Battle Stance, which is every time they dodge or graze, that's a boost to their leg stats, which makes it more likely to do so. Speed nature metals also have a starting Medaforce of High Mobility, which is a flat 100% boost to every ally's evade stat as long as the buff remains in effect. Now, if you weren't already trying to dodge or graze stuff before, well, guess what? You absolutely will be now, and it's going to be nigh impossible for that enemy to land a proper hit unless they have a way to be able to negate that high mobility or find a way to hit you with something that is guaranteed to strike you no matter what. This will guarantee that as long as that buff remains in effect, you are much, much more likely to dodge or graze incoming attacks, which will feed into your passive Medaforce bonus, and of course anything else you decide to add from there. Some suggested builds to use for speed nature metals include speedy or dodgy fighters, much like I said, people that like to jump in and out and try to keep their damage as low as possible by relying on that high evade in order to keep their damage low. Power is not necessarily as emphasized when it comes to speed nature metals, so like I said, a lot of, say, ailment fighters or hybrid fighters that don't have an emphasis on power are a really good option for speed nature metals to make use of. On top of that, this is also a very solid one for mixed fighters as a whole, because compared to most other natures, this one tends to have the biggest and most friendly towards a lot of metals that have shooting and melee on the same build, as denoted as an example by, say, the cat metal. Flight legs and sea legs are also going to be the best recommended choice if you do plan to use a speed nature metal, especially if you want to capitalize on that high evade bonus that you'll be getting not just as a passive but also on your first Medaforce that's guaranteed to you upon using the metal. Because those leg types already have very high base evade and already feed into it. Additionally, anyone that uses, say, Battle Stance, like I said as an example, can also capitalize on this pretty easily with no major drawbacks. Now, the third nature metal of the 6 is the Sniper nature metal, denoted by the purple crystal symbolized somewhere on the metal. Now these are where you want to really start cooking if you want to focus on Medaforce reliant combat. This could be anything from, say, full charge and laser, or beam, or hyper beam, beam sword, ghost, or anything of the like. This is one of the two types of medals that you can really easily capitalize on and use if you want to make sure that every hit that you deal lands, and you also get a Medaforce bonus on top of it for being overtly aggressive. Sniper nature medals like to target arms with low armor, so right from the start, sniper nature medals like to target your glass cannons on the enemy's side. So definitely try to capitalize on this and try to figure out and pick off who's going to be the most fragile on the enemy's side. That's going to be the one that the sniper nature medals like to pick on the most. Then once they're gone, pick the next weakest from there. The passive Medaforce bonus that you get with a sniper nature medal is a 20% to your Medaforce gauge every time a part is broken. Now, unlike it is with speed nature medals, where it's just where you get that 20% one time per graze, the sniper nature medal actually can stack that bonus. So if you break more than one part, say for instance you use power hammer and you break two parts on this at the same time on the enemy, well guess what? That's 40% to your Medaforce your Medaforce gauge at 20% per broken part. So this can really make it easy to capitalize on your Medaforce reliant bonuses and your conditional buffs relative to what kind of part you're using. The passive bonus you also get with sniper nature medals is an 80 to success and a plus 50 to power. So these like to really put an emphasis on guaranteeing that your hits are much more likely to land, and they are also much more likely to be critical hits on top of that as an added bonus. The extra power is just icing on the cake in this point, where it's nice to have, but it's not really going to be the big emphasis on sniper nature medals. The first Medaforce that all sniper nature medals is given is Super Search, which is a 150% bonus to success to all allies across the team. Now this means that while this bonus is in effect, all your hits are more or less guaranteed to land no matter what, unless it's a guaranteed dodge. And in addition to that, you are now immensely more likely that every hit you land has a very high chance, if not guaranteed, to be a critical hit on top of that. Because as a reminder, success ties both of those likelihoods together: likelihood of landing and likelihood of critting. Optimal builds for sniper nature medals include your Medaforce reliant nukers. This can be used towards your melee or your shooting friendly. There is no preference toward either, relative toward the mastery of the medal, of course. So things such as Ghost, Ghost Shot, Hyper Beam, and so on, a lot of moves that require Medaforce charge to access their higher bonuses can really capitalize on this with no drawback and really nothing but benefits all the way around. Emphasis on crits, like I said, and hit rate with sniper nature medals. So if you maybe aren't as focused as heavily on your power, but want to guarantee that when you score a crit, it's going to be immensely painful, then sniper nature medals are probably going to be your absolute best friend. The fourth medal of the batch and the counterpart to sniper nature medals is the hunter nature medal, as denoted by the pink crystals somewhere on the medal. These, in contrast to sniper nature medals, tend to focus more on base power output than they do crits, which serves as a really good counterpart to based on what you're looking for. But much like sniper nature medals, tend to focus on being Medaforce reliant all the same. And it's for this reason that hunter and sniper nature medals can be very freely interchangeable based on what kind of flavor you're looking for and just what kind of behaviors you want of the bot in question. On the topic of behaviors, hunter nature medals like to target legs with low armor. So much like it is with sniper nature medals, hunter nature medals also like to target your glass cannons. Only in particular, hunter nature tends to be a little more overtly aggressive from the front because legs are your primary mobility. If they're broken, you lose basically every kind of ounce of speed you have, and if the enemy is packing a lot of weight with double or triple heavy parts, well guess what? They're not going anywhere anytime soon, and they're basically guaranteed to tank every hit they take no matter what. Passive bonuses for hunter nature medals includes a plus 50 to success and a plus 80 to power. So much like I said, hunter nature medals tend to like emphasizing more on base power more than they do on crits, which makes them just a little bit more conventionally well-rounded and more user-friendly, I guess you can call it. And some examples of these, as you see, are for instance the stealth and the zero medal, as you see here. Medaforce bonus for hunter nature medals, it's also basically one-to-one identical to as it is with sniper nature medals, and that is 20% to your Medaforce gauge upon every part broken. And also, much like it is with Sniper Nature, every broken part busted on your turn stacks that bonus. So if you break, say, 2 parts on the enemy with your turn, well, guess what? That's 40% to your charge right there. The starting Medaforce that all Hunter Nature medals is given upon activation is Attack Trap. Upon activation, this will remove any active traps placed against you on the enemy on your side of the field and place a new generic attack trap for about 1 to 2 charges on the field to replace it on the enemy side. This is going to be more as a retaliatory use towards passive aggression. So while this may not give you a massive stat bonus such as high mobility or super search, this is going to be one you make use of very readily if you want to add some passive aggression as a way to guarantee to break something on the way, or make it a lot easier for you to break something because they take damage before they even get a chance to attack. Or, if you're lucky, the attack trap will break the part they're intending to use before they even get a chance to use it, and buy yourself just a couple extra seconds of time. Optimal builds for Hunter Nature medals, it's basically interchangeable with Sniper Nature medals as well, so emphasis on Medaforce Reliant combat, Beam, Hyper Beam, Ghost, Ghost Shot, Beam Sword, and so on. Anything that's Medaforce Reliant can very easily capitalize on this, especially thanks to that passive bonus you get once you start breaking parts on the enemy team. There is more of an emphasis on base damage with Hunter Nature medals, like I said, so on that note, if you'd rather focus on your overall balance than you are your likelihood of crits, this might be a more beginner-friendly medal for you. But if you find yourself wanting to interchange, you can use Hunter and Sniper Nature medals interchangeably and very freely based on the build you're using and how you want them to behave in combat. The fifth nature of the natures available is the Guard Nature medal, as denoted by the cyan crystal on the medal. These are what you use primarily on your tanks and your shielders, or people that are going to be taking a lot of damage or intercepting damage in place of an ally. So shields or defenders in particular are going to be the main best in slot for any Guard Nature medal in particular. The Guard Nature medals, if they do end up having to be combative in offensive in nature, like to target legs with high heat and cool. So these tend to like targeting the speedier enemies as well on the field, usually an emphasis on, say, your conventional or hybrid fighters, your ailment fighters, and so on. That's usually what Guard Nature medals tend to like focusing on. But with an emphasis on legs, it's much more likely that if they break something, it's going to really cripple the overall speed of that target, because, as mentioned, legs are basically your guarantee to move at any kind of speed or capacity. If those are broken, you're not going anywhere anytime soon. The passive bonus that Guard Nature medals like to give is a flat 120 to both of your resist stats of your legs while active. So this means that you're going to be just a little bit more tanky and have a slightly higher damage reduction on the field as long as this remains in effect. So say on your very tanky bots, such as tank legs or really tanky or strong bipedal legs, they can really emphasize on this and keep their damage reduction as high as possible. Whereas if you use it on someone who's just a little bit more on the fragile side, like a glass cannon, this could be used as kind of a compensation to a point to help them stay in the field just a little longer and comp that very low resist stat, whether it be shoot resist, melee resist, or even both in some cases. The passive Medaforce bonus you get with Guard Nature medal is a 5% for every time you are attacked or if you are intercepting blows. So naturally, if you use this on a shielder or a defender, as examples of popular ones, Jackal, Basalt, and Virgo are very popular examples of the big three of defenders. Every time they're attacked and intercept blows for an ally, that's 5% to their gauge every time, which means that after they take enough hits, and if they're still somehow around and battered but not quite out of the fight, that does give them the ability to unleash a retaliatory Medaforce nuke to kind of help even the playing field, or even give them some HP back depending on the medal, or if it has a restoration slot in its Medaforce slots. On the topic of Medaforce, Guard Nature medal's first Medaforce given upon activation is High Defense, which activates a plus 100% bonus to all allies' resist stats, melee and shooting resist, which with Guard Natures will stack very, very nicely with that passive bonus they get at plus 120 each. So if you weren't already tanky before, I guarantee you once this goes into effect, you're going to be taking nothing but love taps the entire time. Even the most powerful attacks, such as Max Shot, fully charged Ghost Shot, or Hyper Beam, you're just going to be able to shrug off like they're honestly water on a duck's back, because that high resist stat guarantees you're not going to be taking any damage, if any at all. Optimal builds for guard nature metals are primarily going to be your shielders and your tanks for that very same reason. So if you plan to have this model take a lot of incoming hits or intercept damage for an ally, this is going to be the best in slot metal for you. And you want to make sure that you capitalize on that resist bonus, not just with the starting Medaforce, but also with the passive. If you stack this with, say, a very tanky bipedal leg, or a tank leg in particular, now that we're getting some really powerful and high speed ones, then you can really capitalize on this and guarantee that almost every hit you take is more or less going to be a love tap no matter what. This can also be interchangeable with Assist nature, which tends to have a higher emphasis on healing and supporting more than tanking hits. But if you'd rather your shielder be tankier with the HP aspect more than the damage reduction, you can use either relatively freely and also relative to the kind of defender build that you're going for, whether you want them to be focusing on defense and support, or maybe defense and auxiliary combat. Lastly, the sixth nature of the metal natures is Assist nature, which is denoted by the green crystal. These tend to have a high emphasis on staying alive in the fight with HP bonuses, and tend to be favorable towards a lot of healers and supporters, and even in some aspects, like I said, with defenders, depending on how you choose to use them. That high HP bonus that you usually can expect with those will usually guarantee that you can stay in the fight just a little bit longer, and help make sure that your already tanky bot is going to be even tankier as long as it remains on the field. On that topic, if Assist nature metals do end up actually having to to bear arms in combat, they tend to like focusing with arms with low heat and cool. So very similarly to Power nature in this respect, they like to focus on the particularly dangerous enemy on the field that tends to comp, say, a lower speed with a much higher power. This is going to be a really good way to help you kind of figure out who's going to be the more dangerous on the field and the one you want to take out sooner than later, so that you, or even break the more dangerous part so that you can breathe just a little bit easier while in the fight. The passive bonus that you get with a Assist nature metal is a staggering 360 to all parts armor across the board. So if you weren't already tanky enough before, that extra 360 actually does make a lot of difference when it's on the field, especially when push comes to shove and you get to those really, really close fights where every point of HP you have is going to count for or against you. The passive Medaforce bonus you get with Assist nature metals is 3% per action complete. Now, unlike it is with Power nature metals, where it is every attack or combat action completed, Assist nature metal does not discriminate. It can be any action whatsoever. It can be defense, it can be setup, it can be support, whatever it is, it counts, and that is 3% to your gauge no matter what. Or even just so, at the cost of that, it is going to be just a little bit lower of a gain every time you go to complete an action. So don't rely on Medaforce too heavily with Assist nature metals, unless you have someone that can capitalize on that with, say, auto charge as a like ability, or charge plant, or full charge, or something of the like. The starting Medaforce that all Assist nature metals has is Hyper Repair, which adds a very, very potent heal over time effect to every ally across the team. And as long as this effect remains in play, they'll be healing a very impressive amount of HP back to all parts as long as it's in play. Now, once it's removed, or once the all allies' HP is full, then you won't be getting your bonus anymore. But you'll get that back really, really quick, and this helps guarantee that you can stay in the fight as long as possible, and within 1 or 2 turns, you're basically going to be right back to where you were at the start with full or nearly full HP, ready to go once again. Optimal builds for Assist nature metals include your shielders, your healers, and your supports, so primarily a lot of folks that tend to not put an emphasis on combat in any major form, or even at all, depending on how you choose to build it. Some examples of healers include, say, Particle, the Archangel type as an example, Saint Nurse is another one, and so on and so forth. Ones that tend to focus on high HP or restoration are going to be the main best in slot for Assist nature metals. They do tend to be HP oriented, like I said, and it's for this reason that if you'd rather focus on survivability than damage reduction, you can interchange with a guard nature metal relatively easily with no real drop or change in performance. Now, just some closing thoughts on metal nature, because this one's kind of a lot to grasp and absorb, but once you understand how exactly each nature behaves, you'll actually see a very huge difference in how in how your team behaves. And you never know, even just changing the metal nature out on your main bot might just change the tide of battle in your favor, because they're already focusing on something that you need broken sooner than later, or they perhaps have a better plan in mind that actually works out in the long run. On that note, though, different metals offer different bonuses, so even a lot of power nature metals or a speed or assist nature metals or whatever that have the same nature tend to have different powers and different bonuses and masteries relative to how you use them. So on that note, more metals means more compatibility and more flexibility. So do make sure that you capitalize on farming every event you can that offers a medal as an event reward, or complete any story chapters that give you one as well, because you can never have enough medals, and those are honestly the most important part of any Medarot as a whole. Natures is just the icing on the cake to help really solidify your team build and strategy, and guarantee that your strategy is either going to be a winning one or one that still needs just a little bit of work. Maximize your bonuses with natures as well. So try to match a specific nature to what you're looking for, which is why I mentioned and listed a bunch of optimal builds, such as, say, with power nature, ones that are ready out of the box, speed nature, emphasis on flight or sea legs, hunter and sniper with your Medaforce reliant bonuses, guard nature with your tanks and defenders, or assist with your healers or supporters. Try to capitalize on this and try not to veer too far away from this if you can really help it. Because if you give, say, your fighter or your nuker an assist nature medal, sure, they might be just a little bit tankier, but you really won't be getting anything else to capitalize on that high damage output that you're going for. Power nature for nukers, like I said, hunter, sniper for Medaforce reliant fighters, and so on. Once you understand how natures work, this can really make or break your teams. And lastly, I mentioned this with metals as well, and I'm going to mention it here. Medaforce is not always required. It's nice to have, but you are not required to use it. So, on that note, if you don't plan to use Medaforce at all with your team build or that particular bot, then don't worry about it. Try to focus more on matching the mastery of the metal with leg and skill masteries, and nature more with your bot more than Medaforce. And try not to focus on Medaforce unless you absolutely plan to. So, say for instance, if you absolutely need a guard nature's high defense for something, then try to build around that with that particular bot, and actually try to build them for predominantly tanking, or finding a way to capitalize on that and use high mobility or high guard quickly, so that you can emphasize on that bonus. But with all that being said, I do believe that covers everything for this particular tutorial, and I am going to officially dismiss class. This was a little bit of a longer lesson in particular, but it does go very much so in depth on ways that can really maximize and optimize your team's efficiency while on the field. That being said, if you'd like to know more, you can follow us below on Facebook at the Medarot News Network page, or the Metabots Forever community on there as well. You can also join our Discord in the link provided and in the comments below to keep an even closer ear to the ground on the action for more of my 102 tutorials, my weekly episodes, contests, fan art, or anything else of the like. You can also reach out to me personally on Twitter at Isagamikura. So if you have any questions or comments or feedbacks, or if there's something that you'd like to see me cover in my 102 curriculum in the future, or recover since I'm going back and redoing all my older ones, definitely feel free to reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to try to make something happen in the future. But with all that being said, as always, I do appreciate you all for stopping by, just as you always do. And until the next lesson, this is Kura Isagami of the Medarot News Network, signing out.